In the heart of the Maasai lands, where the golden savanna meets the endless sky, lived Nasira, the elder's daughter. Known for her beauty and grace, she was raised to honor traditions that had shaped her people for generations. Her father, Elder Makina, was a respected leader whose decisions were undisputed, his wisdom guiding the tribe through seasons and storms. One serene evening, as the sunset painted the plains in hues of fiery orange and deep purple, Nasira's life was about to change. While gathering water from the river, she heard the rustling of leaves and turned to see a young warrior standing at the edge of the woods. His name was Sefu, known for his bravery, but born of a lineage not favored by her father. Their eyes met, and in that single moment, something unspoken, yet profoundly intense, passed between them. Sefu approached her, his gaze unwavering, his steps sure and quiet. Nasira's heart raced, the clay pot in her hands suddenly feeling as heavy as the decision she felt looming over her soul. As they spoke, their words were few but meaningful, each syllable heavy with the weight of forbidden interest. Nasira knew well the laws of her people. The elder's daughter was not free to follow her heart, but was bound by duty and tradition. Yet, as the stars began to appear, dotting the twilight with whispers of ancient stories, she felt a rebellion stirring within her. Sefu, aware of the consequences, stepped closer, his hand reaching out tentatively to touch hers. Nasira's breath caught, her entire being focused on the warmth of his fingers against hers. The sun sank low over the savannah, casting golden light across the village. Nasira moved quietly, her shuka wrapped closely around her shoulders as she slipped away from the watching eyes of her family and neighbors. Each step brought her closer to the quiet spot under the acacia tree where Sefu would be waiting. As the evening air cooled, she felt her heartbeat quicken. Her thoughts were filled with Sefu, his strength, his gentle laugh, the way he listened to her dreams as if they were as precious to him as they were to her. She could see him now, sitting in the shadow of the tree, his gaze fixed on the horizon as if lost in thought. She smiled, savoring the simple joy of seeing him again. "Nasira," he greeted softly, a smile breaking across his face as he saw her approach. "Sefu," she replied, her voice equally quiet but full of warmth. They didn't need many words. Each glance, each smile held meanings that only they understood. They sat together under the sprawling branches, the evening breeze rustling the leaves around them. Sefu took her hand in his, their fingers entwined in a gentle grip. They shared stories, spoke of dreams, and in the soft twilight, laughter came easily. In these moments, Nasira felt free from the expectations, the constraints, and the weight of her family's status. But as the stars began to emerge, one by one in the darkening sky, Nasira felt the pull of duty claw at her heart. She knew this happiness could only exist in these hidden hours, in these stolen moments. Returning to the village one evening, Nasira stopped by the river to collect her thoughts. The reflection in the water showed her own face, her brows knit with worry and longing. Her fingers touched her cheek, as if trying to understand the woman she was becoming. Was it wrong to wish for freedom, to dream of a life with Sefu by her side? She recalled her father's voice, the words he'd spoken when she was a child. "You are the elder's daughter. You carry the weight of our people's honor." Those words had shaped her, molded her into the woman she was. And yet, with Sefu, she felt herself yearning to break free from those invisible chains. She knelt by the river, whispering her thoughts to the stars as if they might carry her dreams far beyond the boundaries of the village. As Nasira continued to meet Sefu under the cover of twilight, whispers began to circulate among the villagers. Women gathering at the water would glance at her, exchanging knowing looks. Children, unaware of the gravity of their actions, would run past her, giggling and casting curious glances over their shoulders. Even the older men, who rarely concerned themselves with the affairs of the younger generation, seemed to watch her with quiet suspicion. One afternoon, as Nasira was walking back to her family's hut, she overheard a conversation between two women from the neighboring village. "The elder's daughter has been spending much time by the river," one murmured. "With a young warrior, no less," the other replied, her tone heavy with disapproval. Nasira's heart pounded in her chest, and she hurried past, the words stinging like barbs. She was painfully aware that every step she took would be scrutinized, every glance exchanged with Sefu would fuel the rumors. One evening, Sefu brought Nasira a gift, his eyes filled with a mixture of pride and uncertainty as he placed a small beaded bracelet in her hand. The colors were vivid, reds, blues, and yellows interwoven with care. It was a warrior's gift, a token of affection that spoke of deep commitment. "For you," he said softly, "a reminder of the times we've shared." Nasira's heart swelled as she slipped the bracelet onto her wrist, feeling the smooth beads press against her skin. She knew the risk of wearing it, yet it felt like a lifeline, a symbol of a love that defied tradition. "I will keep it close," she whispered, her fingers closing around his in a brief, tender clasp. As they held hands, the world around them seemed to fade away, leaving only the warmth of his touch and the promise it held. Elder Makina, Nasira's father, grew more guarded in his demeanor as the whispers reached him. He had raised Nasira with a stern hand, instilling in her the values of loyalty, duty, and respect for tradition. But now there was a distance in her eyes, a secret that she held close to her heart. One evening, as Nasira prepared to leave the village, Makena stopped her at the edge of their home. His gaze was sharp, piercing through the dusk. "Where are you going, Nasira?" he asked, his voice measured but laden with an undertone of concern. "To gather water for the evening," she replied, forcing a calmness into her voice. Makena studied her, his eyes narrowing as if he could see through the carefully constructed walls she had built around her secret. "Be mindful of your path," he said, his words heavy with implication. "Remember who you are, and remember the honor you carry." Nasira nodded, her heart pounding as she walked away. Aware that her father's suspicions were growing, she knew it was only a matter of time before her secret would be revealed. But the thought of giving up Sefu filled her with a sorrow that no tradition could ease. The evening sky was tinged with the soft colors of twilight as Nasira returned to the village. Her heart, still heavy from the day's hidden rendezvous with Sefu, beat with a rhythm both exhilarated and fearful. She was barely through the village entrance when she saw the gathering crowd, their faces turned toward her like a storm waiting to break. At the center stood Elder Makina, his gaze fixed upon her with a quiet fury that made her pause. The silence that hung in the air was more chilling than any words could be. "Nasira," his voice cut through the stillness, heavy with accusation. "Do you deny the whispers? Do you deny that you've shamed our family by breaking the traditions we hold sacred?" Nasira felt the weight of 100 eyes upon her, the disapproval in their stares pressing down on her shoulders. Her mouth went dry, and for a moment words failed her. She glanced at her father, seeing not only the anger in his face but the deep pain that hid behind it. She had betrayed not only tradition but her father's trust. But before she could answer, a voice rang out from the edge of the crowd. "I am responsible," Sefu declared, stepping forward, his stance unyielding. The crowd gasped as he moved beside Nasira, his presence bold and unwavering. "I do not deny my love for Nasira, nor do I regret it." The villagers looked on in stunned silence, some with anger, others with pity, as Sefu's words settled over them like a storm breaking over the savannah. Nasira's heart swelled with both fear and pride as she listened to Sefu's declaration. She turned to him, her eyes wide with a mixture of admiration and apprehension. Sefu stood tall, his shoulders squared, his face calm and resolute. She had never seen him look so strong, so unwavering, even in the face of the disapproving crowd. Elder Makina's gaze shifted to Sefu, his face a mask of restrained rage. "You dare to claim the Elder's daughter to defy the laws of this village?" Sefu met his gaze without faltering. "I do not seek to dishonor you or your family. My love for Nasira is born out of respect, and I am prepared to accept the consequences." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Some cast sympathetic glances, while others shook their heads in disdain. Nasira felt a surge of defiance rise within her as she stood beside Sefu, the man who had dared to fight for their love, even when the odds were stacked against them. With her heart pounding, Nasira took a step forward, her voice trembling yet clear as she addressed the crowd. "I know what is expected of me. I know that I am bound by duty and tradition, but I also know what lies within my heart. I will not apologize for loving Sefu." The villagers gasped, and Elder Makina's face grew dark with anger. She could feel his disappointment radiating from him, yet she stood firm, her gaze unwavering. "I choose my path," she continued, her voice growing stronger. "I choose my happiness. If that is a crime, then let me bear the weight of it." The words left her lips, echoing in the stunned silence. She could feel the tension in the air, the disbelief of the villagers as they grappled with her defiance. But in that moment, she felt a liberation that no tradition or law could take away. Elder Makina took a long, deep breath, his gaze shifting from Nasira to Sefu and back again. He closed his eyes for a moment, the lines of his face etched with the burden of his decision. He knew that whatever choice he made would have lasting consequences, not just for his family, but for the entire village. After what felt like an eternity, he opened his eyes, his voice solemn and weary. "Nasira, Sefu, you have broken the sacred bond of trust within this village. You have shown a disregard for the honor of your people, and for that, you must face the consequences." The crowd leaned in, waiting with bated breath. "You will choose," McKenna continued, his voice filled with the weight of his authority. "You may leave this village together, exiled and shunned, or you may end this relationship and remain among your people. The choice is yours." A heavy silence fell over the crowd as the words sank in. Nasira felt a chill wash over her, and she looked at Sefu, her eyes filled with both love and fear. She knew what her heart wanted, but the decision was not hers alone. Nasira turned to Sefu, her hand reaching out to grasp his. They stood together facing the man who held the power to shape their future. Sefu's gaze was steady, his expression filled with a mixture of sorrow and determination. "I cannot live without you, Nasira," he whispered, his voice trembling with emotion. "If exile is the price we must pay, then I will pay it gladly." Nasira's heart swelled with love and gratitude, and she felt her own resolve harden. She nodded, squeezing his hand. "Then we will face this together." Elder Makina's face softened, just for a moment, as he watched them. There was a flicker of something, perhaps regret, perhaps understanding, but he stood firm, nodding slowly. "Then so be it," he said, his voice a mixture of sorrow and acceptance. "May you find peace on the path you have chosen." As they turned to leave, the villagers parted, watching them with a mix of awe and pity. Some whispered prayers, others muttered words of disapproval. But Nasira and Sefu walked together, their hands clasped tightly, their hearts united in defiance of tradition. They stepped beyond the boundaries of the village, the savannah stretching out before them, vast and open. The night sky, filled with stars, seemed to welcome them, and for the first time, Nasira felt truly free.